Hi, this is Ish, and today I wanted to talk to you about the INFP. So if you've recently taken a personality test and you've gotten an INFP result, well, congratulations, join the club. So INFPs stand for Introverted Intuition, Feeling, and Perception. So the letters stand for. And we are basically the idealists and dreamers of the world. Famous examples of INFPs are Kurt Cobain, John Lennon, Johnny Depp, Keanu Reeves. Actually, fun thing to notice is that they all have long hair. I don't know if that's an INFP thing or not, but I used to have hair down my shoulders too, up until last year. And how we basically operate with the world is through our cognitive functions. So I think this is where the magic of Myers-Briggs personality really comes into play, because the four letters don't really do much for you, but rather understanding how we operate with the world and ourselves really makes a difference. So the key thing here about INFPs is that our default or dominant mode of interacting is through our introverted feelings, known as FI. So introverted feelings is basically like our natural way of interacting. And this is where we look inside ourselves to see whether something resonates with us and our core values before actually acting on it. So this is why we tend to be really slow in making decisions, just because every little thing we have to see whether that resonates with who we are as people. Even something as simple as, hey, do you want to go to this bar, right? I know this happened to me a lot of times when in my early 20s, my friends would be like, hey, do you want to go to this bar? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know whether it resonates with who I am. I don't know if I want to associate myself with that kind of place or that kind of people. It doesn't really speak to who I am, even though it's just a place you want to go out to on a Friday night, right? It's really not that deep. But for INFPs who have a dominant function of introverted feeling, this is where we really go inside to see whether something resonates with us. And the introverted feeling is also responsible for a lot of emotions and feelings that we feel. So this is why INFPs can tend to seem a little bit sensitive and also emotional. And then our auxiliary function is our secondary function, and this is extroverted intuition. So this is where we look outside the extroverted part to look for different patterns and different opportunities, which is the intuition part. So we look outside of ourselves to look at different patterns and possibilities. And this is why INFPs are known as idealists or dreamers. This is because we're constantly looking at different possibilities and seeing what we can do and how we can accomplish that. And this is also why INFPs can tend to take on different identities. So for example, if I just start walking down the street and I see an ad to be a chef, for example, just a random example, an INFP would look at that and say, okay, maybe if I go to culinary school, I can learn to be a chef, and then I can live in the city, and then I can have chef friends, and then kind of really go into deep abstract ideas, big picture kind of things. Meanwhile, a TJ person, a person who scores the last two letters in the Myers-Briggs, would just look at that and say, oh, cool, chef poster. Not for me, and then keep walking, right? So the extroverted intuition part is the part of us that looks for different opportunities. And our tertiary function is introverted sensing. So now that we've looked at different possibilities, and we've also looked inside ourselves to see whether things align well with our values, we can then start to form opinions based on of right and wrong, based on what we've experienced in the past. So meanwhile, where they have the introverted sensing as a higher function, this kind of comes natural to them. They can just look very rationally and see from their past experiences what happens and what they need to do. For us, since it's our tertiary function, we first must look and gain a lot of experiences and try different things out and see how that feels emotionally before we can then make a decision on things. And lastly, our inferior function is our extroverted thinking, known as TE. And this actually is very hard, comes kind of difficult to us. It's something we can work on, but it's not our natural function. So this is something that won't develop for most INFPs until they're well into their adult life. And this is, the extroverted thinking is part of taking actions, making plans, being very organized, saying what you want to do and actually accomplishing that. So, growing up, a lot of ISTJs, for example, in your life might say, wow, this INFP is really lazy, but actually it's not that. It's just that our default mode of interacting is more on the feeling based and kind of sensing things out and going with their intuition. And extroverted thinking is actually just harder for us to access, but it can be done. So that's something as an INFP you want to work on. And especially in today's world where we, value ambition and getting ahead and, pushing forward, that's a very TE, extroverted thinking based. A lot of times INFPs can feel neglected and feel that we're a little bit behind on life just because the TE part of us takes a little bit more time to mature. So INFPs tend to procrastinate a little bit more in the earlier ages, but once you learn the good habits of setting goals and meeting deadlines, you can then learn to access the TE a bit easier. So I want to talk to you a little bit more about, growing up, what you might expect as an INFP, if anything kind of feels familiar to you, and also going into career paths and also relationships too. So during our teen years, or even younger than that, INFPs are very independent. They're independent in general, but more so as a teenager, you can see that a little bit more. And since our TE is also underdeveloped, we tend to be a little bit more out of the box. We can kind of do our own thing. And for a lot of other people like ISTJs, for example, who are more rational and more focused on conformity and following the given path in life, INFPs can seem a little bit more like a mystery and also irresponsible, even though we're totally not. We just have our unique way of being. And this can probably give us an impression of just being kind of lost in life and not being able to find our place, just because it takes time, because obviously we need to build up the extroverted intuition of actually experiencing life to figure out what we want. So in the beginning, we're not really sure, right? We're just not sure what to do because we don't have that function built in yet. And also, since INFPs are more intuitive and look inwards to themselves, they can often be seen as oversensitive, especially if you're a man in today's society. There's kind of a stigma attached to being a little bit more sensitive and just more emotional. And actually, it's since I did bring up Keanu Reeves and also Kurt Cobain, those are examples of men who growing up kind of felt that little backlash of being a little bit more sensitive as an artist, and they didn't really fit in with the more macho culture around them. So that's something just to keep in mind and something to note. And basically, as an INFP, as a teenager going into adulthood, it's more of a process of trying out different experiences and seeing out what you really resonate with, and what you don't like, what you do like, and then forming that. And once you kind of have a bigger understanding of what you like, you can then narrow in on that. And typical career paths are more creative in nature. So, actors, musicians, artists, here I am creating videos. So it's more of a creative kind of field. It's because we like to think more big picture, more abstract, rather than practical, down to earth, and logical. So I don't think any INFPs would like being an accountant, for example. So just a little bit more big picture. And, going into the workforce as a young adult, you might have started taking more corporate jobs and finding out that you don't really fit into a hierarchy, but just because you like to be a little bit more independent, you don't like being micromanaged, and you want to have a little bit more of a say and kind of have your opinions heard and be also more big picture in thinking. A lot of the corporate companies tend to be very structured. They have a lot of emphasis on ambition and really pushing hard and striving. And for a lot of INFPs, you might feel like there's something wrong with you just because here you are in this environment, you're doing really bad. And that's actually just not your fault. It's just not how you're wired. So I believe that as a young adult, part of being an INFP is finding your own path and setting a course for that. So some things you can do as an INFP is maybe working on a side hustle, working on things you're passionate about. If you have to obviously take a job just to support yourself, do that obviously, but on the side have some ways of additional passive income and doing things that you actually love a lot. Because you'll find that as an INFP, it's very hard to fake being interested in certain things. And that's why maybe some corporate careers don't resonate well with certain INFPs. And once you get enough extroverted intuition, you can then find out what you obviously want to focus on. And going on to relationships and friendships, INFPs tend to be very deep and caring and insightful friends. They often know what you're thinking even before you do. And this is because of their intuitive nature. They can really empathize with other people, really step into their positions. And they really like to have a lot of deep conversations, and they're not much for small talk. And also hanging out with a lot of TJ friends, people who are ISTJs and ESTJs, people who are more thinking and judging, more they like to have like a structure. Hanging out with those types of people can be really helpful because they can give you a structure that you're currently lacking, because INFPs tend to be kind of all over the place. They want to do this and do that, explore different things. And hanging out with TJ people can give you more of a structured, balanced approach to your life. And hanging out with FP types can give you that close emotional connection that you really are looking for. And those will be your really strong friendships. I have an ENFP friend, best friend, and I feel like we connect on every level. We just understand where each other's coming from. And other advice just to have in terms of relationships and friendship is just not to take things too personally, because INFPs tend to get a little bit more sensitive and hurt about different things. But you have to realize that other people aren't as empathetic as you, so what might be a passing remark wasn't meant to be an insult, but rather just a joke. So you want to kind of tone down that emotional response if you can. And different paths to growth as an INFP is to make sure you don't stagnate. So you really want to make sure you utilize your extroverted intuition to, like I mentioned, to experience different things in life. Because if you don't, you'll just be stuck in your head all the time, which is your introverted feeling. So you'll constantly be thinking about what to do and what things to do, but if you don't actually take the steps to do it, you're not really going anywhere, right? So actually taking action and actually working and actually doing things you are thinking of can be a great way to progress as an INFP. And then also just be able to manage your feelings. So this would be finding ways to look inwards and managing that time to kind of sort through your emotions. So meditation would be a perfect way to do that, or you can practice art or singing, anything creative where you're also looking inwards. And I'd also recommend developing your TE, like I mentioned, which is your inferior function. This is your extroverted thinking. And this can be done by what I found personally really helpful is to set mini habits. So there's a book by Stephen Guise called Mini Habits. And this basically means that rather than setting a really big goal for yourself, like a person who's dominant in TE would, you rather just set a very small goal and just accomplish that. So if you originally had a big plan of working out for 2 hours every single day, you can just shorten it down for working out just for 1 minute a day. And that sounds really crazy, but you want to make sure you build that habit of just doing very small things, and over time that actually forms to be a very big habit. And this is a great way to really get yourself to taking action. So if you really baby step those actions, they can actually build into a really lifelong habit. And you probably won't be like super organized like most TJ types, like setting planners and organizing. That won't come natural to you. So rather just focus on taking little baby steps and working on that. And another path to growth is just being true to yourself. So I feel like I mentioned, you really can't fake being an INFP. Here's the thing about being an INFP. You can actually resonate and empathize with other people really, really well. So you can fit in with almost every group imaginable just because you're able to step in their shoes. But what happens in the process is that you kind of go along with that and you're not really true to yourself, and it kind of feels empty. There's like kind of like a nagging feeling. So really take some time to figure out what you like personally and follow that all the way. So if you like me, for example, I like very fancy teas, like Chinese loose leaf teas, which is very like hipster and niche. But there are also other people out there that I know that will love that. So I want to go out there and meet those people rather than trying to fake whatever is popular nowadays. And another thing is also using your FI to your advantage, and by using the law of attraction and studying those techniques. So I really don't subscribe to the fact that all INFPs are depressed. I know that's something that people like to say, but rather if you learn how to manage your introverted feelings and work with your emotions, you can actually use that to your benefit and actually be way happier than other types. This is because with law of attraction is very based on feelings. So if you can train yourself to look for the good in life, that's what you'll actually reflect back into you. It'll be like a positive feedback loop. And last, bit of advice would just be keep your investment a little bit lower when you're first meeting people, just because as INFPs, we like to think big picture. So for example, if we go on a date, the common example is if we go on a first date, we think of how our marriage would be with that person. I know it's kind of out there, but with INFPs, we like to think really big, like think 5 steps ahead. And other people aren't really in that mindset. So in the beginning, you want to keep your friendships, your relationships Keep your investment a little bit lower than normal. Don't jump head in. This is because you'll inevitably get hurt a lot easier. So keep your investment a little bit smaller and then kind of work with it over time. Then you can start to create a deep and long-lasting friendship. So I hope this helps, and I'll be making more INFP videos soon. Thank you.